Hi, my name is Steve Malloy. Welcome to Pharma, Macedonia. Here we're in one of our greenhouses where we grow 100% organically. We use a process called living soil no-till, which is very common in Northern California where we get most of our growers. Macedonia is an unbelievable environment for the plants. They love it here. It's very similar to Northern California or Tuscany. I have to say this is probably the best job in the world. Little technical difficulty there. But I think you've seen enough of the video. There was a bit of a pause. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about us as a company, who I am, how we got to where we are, and share some of our mistakes. Hopefully that will help you all and avoid some of your own mistakes. As I said, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. That's where I grew up. I went to school in Washington, D.C. at Georgetown University, which is an international school, and lived abroad for probably a third of my life at least, mostly in emerging market countries. I was on Wall Street working in the emerging markets area, working with countries such as Thailand, Brazil, Russia, etc. And decided to get into the cannabis business about 7 years ago. The idea sort of came to mind. 6 years ago we started planning, and 5 years ago we were basically up and almost running. We're a small group of investors. We're not a public company, so you won't hear a lot about us in the news. We don't do the whole press release thing because, like I said, we just have a small group of investors, and everybody knows what we're doing, and they would prefer that we focus on the business as opposed to the story and the whole running around thing. So, as I said, what I'd like to do is share some of our mistakes and then show you what I think brings success. We follow the EU GMP guidelines because we're a medical company in Europe, so it's EU GMP. I'm sure you have your own style of GMP here. And one thing that I have to say is that it's interesting when you start setting up as an EU GMP company because it forces you to organize and follow SOP strictly in every aspect of your business. We're undergoing audits right now for our EU GMP inspection, which we expect at the end of the summer. And it's interesting how deep they go, how deep the auditor goes in terms of telling us exactly what we need, where we need it. You know, for example, one of his notes recently, he gave us 5 pages, but these are things like you need to have a check-in in your water treatment system, so when someone goes in and cleans the floor, we know it's done. So every single detail is checked off, and that's what allows you to basically repeat what you're doing and have a consistent outcome, which is the key to success in the medical area. I would like to say that there's no way to do there's no correct way to do what we're doing. We do it our way. I'm sure you do it your way. So I'm not up here to try to grandstand and tell you this is how it needs to be done. Just sharing my 2 cents in terms of how I think for us it works, and everything is going to be different according to what products you're delivering to the market, who are your growers, what's your facility, is it indoor, is it greenhouse, etc. So I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm just here to share how we do it. And I'd like to also to share some of the things that I've seen in the market over these basically 6 years, what I've seen, other companies that I've seen doing certain things. If I can share a little bit, I think it helps, because Thailand is a new market here, and there's always, a lot of ironing out the creases in the beginning to avoid such mistakes. So if I could share anything, I'd be happy to. I'm not going to go into full detail on exactly how we cultivate down to the dirt, etc. But if you'd like to talk about it afterward in the roundtable, I'd be happy to share what we do, how we do it, and any other questions that you might have that come up during this talk here. So I left the U.S. about 6 years ago, as I said. We were looking at investments we're basically a small group of investors. We were looking at investments in the United States 6 years ago, mostly in Colorado. That was the most advanced market at the time on the rec side. It was very difficult to find what we wanted, which was basically a niche or a product that we thought could be successful, a group or a leader who we could believe in, and then a structure that was legitimate, right? We needed all three of those things, and you'd be surprised how difficult it was to find those three things. Would find a product or a niche or an opportunity that was great, and then the CEO would be like, yeah, I sold Coke in college, now I'm doing this. And it was tough, coming to base with that and using that experience to say, okay, this guy's great, this is going to be a great leader here. However, you meet a grower who says, I've been growing for 15 years, then you turn around and say, oh, that's sort of interesting. So there's different levels of this mix between the illegal market beforehand and the market right now. But we couldn't find what we wanted in the United States, and what really pushed us abroad was one of my investors, this billionaire. He said, I'm not doing anything gray, and the U.S., as you know, is state legal, federally illegal. And I said, no, it's not gray, it's legal, it's state legal. And he said, no, I'm not taking the risk and getting my name in the headlines because Jeff Sessions doesn't like it or turns things around and comes after the investors who go into it. So that was years ago when it was a newer space. People were more nervous back then. It was mostly a retail game. But we started to look internationally because we wanted something that was completely clean, in the sense of completely legal, to bring in. What we have is, I guess it's retail money, but it's ultra high net worth retail money. So it's more like small family offices, and these people didn't want to take that risk in the United States. So we looked abroad, mostly in Europe. We could see the dominoes falling in the United States, and we thought Europe is starting to move, and we figured which companies are going to be next. Macedonia, as you saw in the video, very interesting country for cultivation. They were one of the first to legalize. Its largest trade partner is Germany. It's right above Greece, and it's basically an emerging market play in Europe. So it's like, I would call it the Colombia of Europe, where we have the lowest cost production in Europe. And that's where I basically took my experience from Wall Street on the emerging market side, and then combined it with the cannabis space. And what we're bringing is a Western-facing company based out of Macedonia, cultivating using a California style with the lowest cost of production. Because I think in the end, that's really what it comes down to, is if you can deliver a quality product and you can keep your cost under control. And back then, that was quite a while ago, we were looking at the Canadian companies that were pushing into Europe, or talking about moving into Europe, the big names, the Tilrays, the Auroras, the Cannabis, and looking at their cost of production. And up in Canada, it's not so simple to grow cheap cannabis in Canada, export it to Europe, and get it right. And we decided to be on the ground, closer to the market, and keep our costs under control. we follow ESG principles, and we decide for multiple reasons. Some of our investors, our second largest investor, manages over $10 billion in emerging market equities, and our investors give us a lot of guidance in terms of how they want the company run and how they like to see it. And if you follow the basic ESG principles, it just seems to fall in line on an institutional level. And everything that we've done from the beginning in setting up this company is to set up a company that is institutional in the sense of the structure, the team, the tax structure, the ownership structure, the tax structure, etc. And the reason is because you want to do it right from the beginning, as opposed to needing to go back and clean up some of these things later if you're going to do a merger, if you're going to go public, etc. So from us, because of our investors, they sort of pushed us in that direction. We're not completely sustainable. We do use some electricity, but growing the way that we do, we're probably the most sustainable company, one of the most out there. I don't know the most, but one of the most sustainable companies in Europe. Sorry. I'd like to explain why we use living soil and why we cultivate organically. We started when there weren't many organic cultivators in Europe. I think we're one of the only ones. I'm sure there are other ones. I don't know of any, but we cultivate 100% organically, meaning all of our inputs are organic and tested, even if it's tested on the bag, the batch tested back at the factory, we retest. And secondly, we use living soil, which is basically creating your own ecosystem in a pot, massive pots, 100-gallon pots, 400 liters. And we're basically giving the plants everything that they need in every stage of their growth, so they can choose, almost like, you go to these five-star hotels, you look at the buffet, and you can choose whatever you want. When the plant's small, everything that it needs to grow is there. When it's vegging, everything is there. When it's flowering, the same. So we use very little extra nutrients in our cultivation. And the living soil creates, as I said, a very strong plant, which is, it matters for certain reasons. The plant is strong so it can fight off diseases, it can fight off pests, etc. We use bugs on our plants from this company called Coport in Holland. Most of our service providers are out of Holland because that's where we're based. And basically we're trying to create plants that have massive terpenes. As we said in the name of the presentation, we're trying to create a craft level cannabis and sell it medically. We just started we've been cultivating for 5 years. We've cultivated over 1 ton of dried trim flower per year, which is a good size for medical. In the US, you've got a lot of other growers that are growing more. A ton is a lot to start with, but from my point of view, I wanted the team working on the exact SOPs as we would be working on them going forward, as opposed to, I see a lot of companies that start with a pilot program. They'll work in a small room or a small section or one greenhouse, and they'll try to get everything right, and then they'll go off and market it to clients. We did it a bit differently, and we went large scale from the beginning, where from my point of view, you've got the entire team working on every aspect of the business, where they're going to work when you're at full production, as opposed to having one great grower in the corner who's building a product and then going out and marketing it. The other thing is that my idea when we were planning on to start marketing, we didn't want to go to customers and say, we have a small pilot program, this is what we grew, here's our testing, now we can take your order and we can grow a lot more, because people don't have the patience for that. So we want it to be set up so when companies come in, mostly from Germany right now, Australia a little bit, when they come in and say, okay, I like this product, I want to buy 100 kilos or 200 kilos or 400 kilos or whatever it is they're looking for, we would be able to deliver that. So as I said, we've produced over 1 ton per year for 5 years. Now we're between 1.5 to 2 tons per year, so a little bit higher than that. We have a very large property, which we got basically so we could scale out as the market grows. And we didn't want to make the mistake of needing to open another cultivation nearby or in the same country, because you're basically duplicating everything, and you're probably tripling your headaches. So we have room for expansion. We're planning right now on adding a greenhouse as the market moves up. As I said, we started exporting last year into Germany. Germany is the largest medical market in Europe, and now a lot of other markets are following. As you know, Germany is talking about legalizing recreationally. We can talk about that a little bit on the side if you'd like, but I think generally the main idea is that we don't have the exact details on how it's going to look, so it's hard to really start planning for a market like that. But it is great to see markets like Germany moving to rec. Holland is starting with their pilot program. I know we have some Dutchies here, and they're rolling out a program with 10 licensed cultivators to supply about 79 out of 573 coffee shops in Holland. It's a small portion, but just those 10 are expected to deliver about 65 to 75 tons per year. So it's quite a lot for a new licensed grower to start delivering 6 tons a year. Their program is going a little bit slow. It's a slow rollout, but I think that's what we see almost everywhere. Everything takes longer than you would expect. But it's nice to see countries like Holland rolling out. Switzerland already rolled out. I have some friends down there that are growing. They've been growing CBD for years. They've sort of tied in their quality on the CBD side, and now they're rolling over to THC, and it's amazing seeing that happening. So Holland, Germany, Switzerland, Czech is moving right on the heels of Germany. You've got the other countries like Malta and Luxembourg that have basically decriminalized. So it's moving very fast, but I think for me, the most important thing to see is what we're seeing here in Thailand, because it came and moved so fast. We're not active here, so I'm by no means a specialist, and not trying to act like I am. Just from our point of view in Europe, from an American in Europe, it's really exciting to see what's happening in Thailand, because for the most part, cannabis is frowned upon in Europe. On a legal basis. So it's interesting just to see a massive rollout, and it's wild. I mean, from what I've been here 3 days or so, and have with the family, so I haven't been that deep into the cannabis scene, but you see it around. I've stopped in at a couple stores and things like that. It's really exciting to see what's going on, and I think this is going to be sort of the first shot fired in Europe, and then there's really no putting the cat back in the bag with this market. Everyone's saying, how is it going to look? Are they going to roll it back to medical from recreational, etc.? I think it is what it is as of right now, and it's going to keep growing. And a lot of these governments, especially after COVID, there's such a demand for capital. They're so starved for taxes when they see a new industry like this, and they see the employment popping up. We see it in Macedonia. Just a little sidetrack. It's a very small country, so we meet with people like the Prime Minister over there. Everyone's accessible. You hang out with ambassadors. It's really interesting. It's a country of 1.5 to 2 million people, and we invited the Prime Minister over to visit, because he was at an opening nearby, and we said, come by and see us. We've been operating for years. It might be interesting to see an operating company rather than just a new one. And he wrote back saying, thank you so much for not stopping working during Corona. We know that you built out your EU GMP processing area, and he referred to our 70 employees, etc. And I was surprised that he even knew that we built out our GMP processing area, that he knew how many employees we had. And I looked at my COO, who's local, and I said, he's acting like that's a big deal. He said 70 people in Macedonia. That's decent. They know who the bigger employers are. So just by hiring people, taking care of business, doing things right, paying your taxes, etc., it's the governments notice it, because they're basically leeching off of all the businesses, right? They're taking the money and doing what they think is right with it. But when they see something new, it's like crack for them, and they're going to go after it. So once you see these taxes start coming in from the businesses, from the shops, etc., I don't think there's any turning back. So I'm really excited about this market, even though I have nothing going on here, but I'm excited for all of you. And I've met some people. We had a little get together last night. I've met some people who are local or from the area, and it's really nice to see everyone jumping in at these early stages. And the best thing is I was there in the beginning in Europe for sort of six years ago, when there weren't many people in the market. And this is where we are here. This, a little bit further, but not much further. And it's these people sitting here, I would bet, are going to be the leaders of this market in the next few years. And it's exciting. So I think even though some days, you look at the situation, you think everything that's going wrong and this is complete hell and how is it going to turn around? And then you look back a few months later and you think, okay, we overcame that and now we're moving forward. And that's basically how it happens. So I think it's really exciting to see the attitudes from people here that are so excited jumping into the business. And I think it's only going to be successful here. One thing I would say is that when we were building out the facility, and the reason why I bring this up is because you've got some new companies here. When we were building out the facility, what we learned most is that the planning is the most important part, and that may be because we're EU GMP or maybe with every business, but the planning is crucial. And what we saw a lot of companies doing is moving very quickly. And in a certain way, especially you look at the larger companies, the large corporates, the Canadians, some of the larger American companies, they're sort of top heavy, where you've got the executives who are, they know the space, they know what to do, but they're sort of, their plate is crowded and they have a lot going on and they don't have a lot of time. So they come into a country like Macedonia or Portugal or Denmark, etc. They say, this is what I want done, boom, boom, boom. I'll be back in 6 months, and they come back 6 months later and nothing's done. And that's what we saw is sort of a lack of operators in the space. One thing in Europe is you don't have the same entrepreneurial energy as you do in the US, or I would say here as well. I sense the same energy in Europe, not to be too negative to the Europeans in the room, but they're just more used to having things done for them. They don't have that roll up your sleeves spirit where they get out there and I think I just insulted someone, did I? Sorry. No. Okay, good. So the reason? In Europe? Doing what? Starting a company, you're saying? You do it certain ways for a reason? Which I think is right, and slow and correct. I think is the way to do it, and that is one of the good qualities that comes from Europe. I think one that you don't see is the openness to do whatever needs to be done. For example, we have a lot of employees that come and they say, "What's my job description?" And they want, and this could be because we're in Macedonia, which is it used to be a communist country, so it's a little bit different than. Where are you from, sir? Germany. So this is a different setup, right? So if you're coming from communism, you have your you have your job description, and you stick to that. And they don't like moving away from it. And a lot of times they'll call it out and say, oh, that's not my responsibility, and they'll just keep walking. There'll be an accident, and they'll just leave it on the floor and keep moving, just as a lame example. But what you have is people who are not used to just sort of getting things done, switching tasks, etc. And from the U.S., I think I see that entrepreneurial spirit more from the U.S. than I think here as well. Germany, I don't see it. I'm not being negative, because Germans are the best producers in the world by far, right? But but those are the bigger companies. The smaller companies, I don't see the entrepreneurial spirit as much as I do in others, and they take a lot of the old, what they've learned in other industries, and try to move it over to cannabis and sort of generalize it. So this is what we learned here. This is what we're going to do in cannabis, and Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But one thing in building out your facility is some of the mistakes that I've seen made is people planning the facility before they know what products they're going to make or what grower is going to be there. So maybe it's the executives that are planning out the facility. Maybe it's maybe they bring in a consultant, and I think the consultants or the senior managers building out a facility. It may be a beautiful facility, but what's going to happen is the growers are going to come in and say, "Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? You shouldn't have done this. I can't get this amazing quality you want me to do because he did it this way." It's always the blame game. So I think it's important to have your team together and building out the facility the way that you want to operate the facility, as opposed to a consultant coming in and showing you basically what he has built before, she has built before in another situation that may work for them, but they're just copying it because that's what they know. So I think those are some of the mistakes that we've seen made, where people build out the facility and we say, you know, where's your growers? And they say, oh, we don't have them yet. We're building out first, and then we're going to bring them in. And I think that's a tough way to do it, at least medically. Maybe on the recreational side, that's possible, but medically, I think you're going to have a lot of problems going down the road, because you're basically giving your growers a get-out-of-jail-free card where they can always come back and say, not my fault. I didn't build this place. They didn't do this right. They didn't do that right. So that's one thing that we've seen. And I think a lot of times that could lead to failure. The other thing is that when you're doing that, you're planning with someone who's not going to be working there, and then maybe the grower comes in and says, oh, it's close, but we have to retrofit this and change this, and that's just more time, more money, backtracking, and slows things down and makes things less efficient, I'd say. We rather than hiring one master grower, we decided to use a more diversified approach. I come from the banking side, so we tried to diversify our risks. And in this business, we do the same thing. But rather than having one master grower who controls everything on the cultivation side, we decided to have specialists such as IPM, as Brandon was talking about earlier, the propagation, the breeding, the feeding, the harvesting, etc. And everybody has their focus. And we find that easier because you don't have one grower sort of telling everybody what to do, using their style from, usually it comes from an illegal process. If you have a grower who's been around for a long time, then they were basically cultivating illegally, which is usually great because they've got a lot of experience. But I think the tough side of that is these growers come in with a little bit of attitude, in the sense where they say, okay, this is the only way to do it. You have to do it this way. You can't do it that way. And they're always trying to sort of push their style, which may not be right for this particular facility or for EU GMP. A lot of the recreational growers don't understand EU GMP. They're not used to following rules. They're not used to even having a corporate structure, having a boss to report to or to follow orders. And I think that's where we've seen some issues with the growers. That's another reason why we decided to spread out our risk and have people focusing on different areas of the business. I'd much rather have a grower who basically puts her head down and follows direction and works hard, rather than a grower who's trying to use all their old styles from the Emerald Triangle or wherever they're coming from in a place that might be slightly different, right? When you're setting up, I think it's key to know, as I said earlier, what products you're going to be targeting in the market. Are you going to be rec? Are you going to be medical? It's really hard to switch back. Here is basically a recreational style, it's a recreational opening. From what I've seen so far, and I think it's tough to go back. If you set up a rec grow and then they force a medical, it's going to be tough to switch back, to roll your facility back. And the main thing there is passing the testing, right? Because if you're going for medical, they're going to start putting the testing, they're going to start testing the products, they're going to start forcing testing. And I think that's where we've seen most of the companies fail in Europe, because you've got recreational style cultivation, underground growers who have never tested before, and now they're trying to pass the testing. So that's another reason why we decided to cultivate organically, because we don't need to focus on our heavy metals. They're zero. We don't need to focus on our pesticides. They're zero. So we basically just focus on the microbiology side, TYMC, TAMC, and it's easier for us doing that. And luckily, because of the way that we cultivate, our numbers have been low on that side. Sorry, just jumping around here. Yeah, just to go a little bit deeper in terms of the way that we're cultivating organically. For us, as I said, we test every input. So we're testing the soil, we're testing the compost, we're testing the worms, the worm casting, the water, the nutrients, repeatedly, not just once. And if we buy from one company and they test well, and we buy from them again, we're going to retest it. So I think that's one thing that allows us to have the low microbiology, as I said, we have. And I think it's really just from testing the inputs and keeping a clean environment. It's so basic, but the cleanliness of your facility really adds to the outcome of the product. Another thing on the genetics, we use genetics out of California. Our goal is to grow a craft level quality, and we find great genetics out of California. We also grow similarly to Humboldt County, so we prefer genetics from that area. And we're growing in greenhouses, so what works for someone else who's growing indoors may not work for us, and vice versa. So genetics are key, and that's what I think people are going to find out. The best thing here is that there are a lot of genetics in the market. In the beginning, they were talking about controlling the genetics, and now it seems like there are so many in the market that it's going to be too difficult to pull them back. What we focused in the beginning was on our quality. We figured that if we have a quality product, it's gonna sell somewhere. I mean, it's a basic principle, but people are gonna like it. And if you look at the situation in the United States, where you've had sell-offs in various markets in Washington State, Oregon, California right now, the quality products have held their pricing. They still fell slightly, but they basically held their pricing. For us, the prices in Europe on medical cannabis are a lot lower than you would imagine. So we opened up the company aiming for that pricing, as opposed to you look at a market like Massachusetts a couple of years ago, where they were selling at $5,000 a pound, $3,000 a pound a couple of years ago, and there was so much profit margin that people got lazy, people got inefficient, basically. So we basically set up for a very competitive market to be able to compete into the 90th minute, to use a football analogy, or soccer. Yeah, one thing as well, just to say on the medical side, is don't cut corners. We've seen that with a lot of companies in Macedonia, where they try to cut a corner to pass a test, etc., or to get an approval or a certificate, etc. But those things are going to come back to haunt you, and we see that with the audits that we have and with the certifications that we have as well. So that's one thing just to keep in mind as you're building out. I've got a couple more things to go through, but I think I'm going to leave it for now, because the time is coming up, and we can speak later at some of the roundtables, or over the next couple of days. I look forward to meeting everyone here, and would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.